In 1963, a bomb went off in the church in Birmingham, Alabama, killing 4 young black girls. John Coltrane.
You have 1 minute remaining.
John Coltrane took up the call to put this tragedy in its proper context. You must feel the sadness, he told the people of America. Similar to what Gerard Flipper's family is calling us to do today. What Breonna Taylor's family and Eric Garner's family is calling us to do. This was Coltrane's way of marking the moment, of not allowing it to slip into the future without notice. It was also his way of summoning the ancestors, calling them to do justice to the situation. Sadly, we are still in Alabama. Alabama by John Coltrane.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me better? Yeah, this is better. Wow, that was amazing. So before we get started, I just want to give a introduction to all the musicians that are here today. Dominique Gagne is on the flute today, so shout out to Dominique. On the rhythm section, we got Vinny Speranza, Marty Eisenberg, Eddie Bourgeois, Martha Sanchez. Trumpet section, we got Jonathan Saraga, Jake Henry, Callie Rodriguez. I'm reading this, Pablo Macy's, Yaish Muhammad, trombone section, Dan Lerner, Noah Bless, saxophone section coming in strong today, Anzi DeFay, Alfredo Colon, Elijah Herring, my man Jerry Wilkie, Kaz George, Kevin Edel, Sky Hamilton Carranza, Jessica Laurie, and one of my favorites, Jay Rodriguez. And then we have our conductor and co-organizer, Albert Marquez. So he's the one that brings it all together. So some of you guys might be wondering why we are out here doing this event, and you might see the sign out there, Justice for Keith Lamar. So just to give everyone a little context, Keith is a gentleman who's on death row in the state of Ohio for crimes that he did not commit. He's maintained his innocence for close to 3 decades now, all while in solitary confinement, 28 years in solitary confinement for something he didn't do. And so Keith is, at the height of the crack epidemic, Keith was a 19-year-old in poverty-stricken area called The Village in Cleveland, Ohio. And just like many young black youth in America, found himself in the midst of the drug trade during the time, right? And was making a lot of money, doing a lot of things that, you know, society kind of systemically sets us up to do as young black men. And he got caught in a robbery. He's being robbed at gunpoint by some other drug dealers, and they got in a gunfight, and Keith got shot twice, and Keith happened to shoot and kill someone else in the process. Wasn't premeditated. In actuality, it was really done in self-defense. And so Keith was, and the ironic thing about it was the gentleman that he shot and killed was someone that he grew up with. They were friends as kids. So Keith takes a plea deal for the murder because he said that was something that he did do. So he wanted to own and take responsibility for that. And ultimately what happens is he takes a plea deal for 18 years to life. And 4 years into his prison sentence, he's at a prison in Lucasville, Ohio, and there are a lot of grievances at the prison. There's a new warden, new prison administration, and they were coming down really hard on the inmates at the time. And there was a TB test that was being administered in the prison, and a lot of the Muslim inmates at the time took issue with this because the TB test was going to inject some form of alcohol into their system, which was going against Islamic doctrine at the time. So they felt like it was a violation of their religious beliefs. So the warden is saying, we're gonna go through with this anyway. And so the prisoners at the time took it upon themselves on Easter Sunday in 1993 to organize a riot and a rebellion in response to this. And in the process of that, what turned out to be an 11-day siege of the prison by the inmates. And during that riot and rebellion, there was 10 people murdered, one being a prison guard, and 9 prison inmates. And just so happened that 5 of the people killed during that riot were in Keith's cell block. So how does Keith get implicated in all of this? Keith had no affiliation with the gangs that organized this, had no affiliations with any of the groups that were sort of leading this rebellion, but these people were murdered in the cell block. So the state comes in, they send a whole commission in, and there's, you know, all types of evidence that's tampered with. There's no forensic evidence tying any of the inmates to any of the crimes that were committed. And so the only thing the state could do was to have the prisoners at the time sort of implicate each other. Somebody had to take the fall, right? And so there's a lot of prisoners at the time that are pointing the finger at each other, and the state is essentially promising them like more lenient punishment as a result. And they go to Keith, and they say, we'll offer you a plea deal for one of the murders, and it probably means that you'll probably never see life on the outside ever again. And ultimately what Keith, he refuses. He said, I had nothing to do with this. I don't know why I'm being implicated in it. And so they say, all right, they give him 9 counts of aggravated murder. And Keith says, I'm going to go to trial and fight those. And they all had death penalty implications. So Keith goes to trial. There's all types of prosecutorial misconduct, evidence withheld. There's statements withheld from people that confess to murders that Keith is on death row for currently. This is all evidence that was withheld. The trial is moved to an all-white county in Ohio. There's 2 black jurors that are removed from the trial. And so Keith goes to trial and is up against an all-white jury. And it's a very political case, right? Somebody's got to be responsible for these murders. Keith was not implicated in the killing of the prison guard, but nonetheless, the state needed to hold some individuals accountable, right? So, long story short, trial happens. Keith gets convicted, 5 of the murders, and is sentenced to death. And so, Keith, why we're here, why we're doing this in New York, is last year, right after George Floyd got killed, talking to a good friend of Albert and mine, Brian Jackson. Some of you guys might know him, one half of Gil Scott and Brian Jackson. And it's all this social political unrest at the time, and a lot of Brian's music focused on those issues. And so I asked Brian, I said, Brian, well, what would you tell this generation of protesters from Black Lives Matter? And he said, well, there's a lot of injustices happening that people aren't talking about. And he said, like Keith Lamar. And I said, who the hell is Keith Lamar? And he told me, gave me a little brief synopsis of who Keith is. And he told me, he said, you gotta get his book, you gotta read his book. And there are copies of his book on that table. And I definitely recommend getting one. And so I found myself in the middle of June last year, literally a year to the date, and I'm reading Keith's book at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I get halfway through, can't put it down. I say, I gotta write this guy. If nothing else, I want this person to know that there's someone in the world that has heard of his story and that cares about this and wants to demonstrate that. And so I wrote Keith, and that kind of just started a dialogue between he and I that has continued for forever now, right? And it will continue. And so one of the things that Keith and I connected over was our love for jazz music. And Albert kind of got involved last year around the same time. And Albert said, I don't know what the hell we can do, but we can organize a concert. And look at this, we organized a concert, a couple of them. But So we said we want to do this concert for Keith, raise some awareness, even if it's in New York, and hopefully bring this Freedom First thing to a national level where we can do them all over the country. And so that's why we're here. We're here advocating for and fighting for somebody that I always say is the bravest and most radiant soul I know. Someone I love very dearly. Someone I've invested a lot of time into. Someone who I'd say I'm his secretary. And so Keith, a couple of things we've been doing in addition to the concerts. Keith has a literacy project called Native Sons. He gives and participates in book clubs with kids all over the country, speaks at colleges. I'm a teacher here, a high school teacher here in New York. This year we started a book club with Keith. A couple of my students are here. And it's been really profound exchanges. And Keith is very intent about not just having things done for him, but also giving back to a lot of people, particularly young people. And so this is one of the ways in which he spends his time. He's very dedicated to uplifting and bringing more light to people's worlds. I always say he gives people far more than they give him. So just a couple weeks ago, Albert and I went to visit Keith, drove out to Ohio. Drove too many hours, but we won't talk about that. But Keith, one of the things we talked about on visit was just so much music, and that was like the bulk of the conversation. And I just want to say it's like real testament to it being a great unifier. It's brought all of us together here on his behalf, and I know he really, really appreciates it. So just so happy that we can do this, and so much gratitude to you all. And gratitude to you all for also being here. So today we got a couple more. Yep. Today we got some more music coming in, and then Keith is gonna call in and play live. He's working on an album, believe it or not. If you can, go on Instagram and follow at Justice for Keith Lamar. You can also find a Facebook page. And yeah, just spread the word as much as possible. We're trying to raise funds for his legal defense, and any support that you guys can lend, whether you know someone, you never know. Like, this thing has like trickled down like domino effect in terms of people getting involved, and just how much Keith likes to say. I was talking to him this morning. He said, "We've done so much in 1 year," and I'm like, yeah, like more people that read his book and learn about his situation. You can't not get involved, and you can't not do anything. And so I'm gonna stop with my rant, but I wanted to make sure everyone had proper context in terms of why we're here today. And especially wanted to thank you all for doing this. I know it's precious time. So I'm gonna hand it back over to the band, and let's do this.
Red Clay by Freddie Hubbard. Besides Miles Davis, Freddie Hubbard has one of the most warming sounds on the trumpet. This sound just makes me so determined. I use music as a backdrop to my writing sometimes. And I've listened to this song to fire off some feisty letters to several judges over the years. Freddie Hubbard is such a gift to me in my life. Listening to him reminds me to be serious in my approach to things, in my approach to life. And I really try to be. I mean, I'm so sincere, just like Freddie. I love his the bass line, the low-key intensity, and the way Freddie soars above it all, which is exactly what I try to do in my life. Red Clay by Freddie Hubbard.
Killer. All right, so for those of you guys just joining us, we're here for Keith Lamar. We've been doing these Freedom First events. It's called Freedom First. This is the third one that we're doing. Last year, this started in August. Albert, who you see conducting the concert, and I co-organized this with our friend Julian. And we're doing this on behalf of Keith. Keith is a wrongfully convicted death row prisoner in the state of Ohio. He is one of the bravest souls I know. If you want to know more about him, there are copies of his books back at that table. You can purchase them there. You can also go follow his Instagram and Facebook accounts at Justice for Keith Lamar. And I really encourage you to learn more about his story. It is a story of bravery, but mass injustice. And he is he's just a radiant soul. In addition to checking out his Instagram account, you can also check out, Keith has a podcast. It's called Pieces of a Man. And they've done one season of it already, and he's coming back with another season later in July. So I really encourage you to check him out and learn more about what he's about. He's also going to be calling in and we'll be performing live with the band today. So hopefully you guys can stick around to catch that. All right? Thank y'all.
When I was 25 years old, I was thrown into a dark prison cell on a hard death row. Thrown here for crimes I didn't commit. I've been offered a deal by the people who put me here, and told that if I would but plead guilty, I would be spared years of unnecessary pain and suffering. I refused. Instead, I stood on my truth. This song captures perfectly the feeling of desolation I felt in the beginning, and the gradual sense of attendance that came as I committed myself to the journey. I wasn't alone in my struggle. The truth would win out. Not only the truth about my situation, but the greater truth about who I am, who we are. We are bigger than the things that confront us, bigger than the pandemic, bigger than mass incarceration, bigger than the poverty and hopelessness that's sown in so many out there, bigger than the poverty and hopelessness that so many of us experience in this society. Together we are bigger than it all. But I was too
I felt Keith's spirit in that song, really. So anybody that just joined us, at Justice for Keith Lamar on Instagram, Facebook. Keith is a wrongfully convicted death row prisoner in the state of Ohio. He's been in solitary confinement for the last 28 years, 23 hours a day, some really inhumane conditions. I went to see Keith 3 weeks ago, me and Albert, who's conducting the concert, and I left the prison. They sent 2 guards out with Keith. They escorted him in and out with 2 guards. Had his hands shackled, had his feet shackled. During our visit, they shackled him to like the bolted table. They shackled his feet, and it's just like kind of a wild thing. But it was the first time I met Keith, but it wasn't really the first time I met Keith. I just felt like I was seeing an old friend, and we had that kind of conversation. But the reason I bring that up is Keith, we hugged at the end of the visit, and he asked for about 6 hugs on the way out, and we were joking about it. He pissed the guards off. He kept asking me to come back and give him another hug, but he later told me that was the first time he hugged someone in over a year, and part of that was due to the COVID restrictions that were placed at the prison. So he's only been able to receive 1 visit per month for the last couple of months. Finally, his visits had opened up, and Albert and I were the first people he was able to hug. So I left the visit with Keith with rivers of tears streaming down my face, and he's just such a beautiful person that if you connect with him, you just can't help but feel some sort of compassion and compelled to get involved with him. So again, follow at Justice for Keith Lamar. Spread the word, share it with a friend, share it with your family. There's books back on that table. Keith published a book, self-published a book while he's been in prison. It's titled Condemned. I highly recommend that you check it out. That's why I'm here speaking on this mic, is because I read his book. So I really recommend you read his book if you want to learn more and get involved. And definitely support his legal fund. I'm trying to raise as much money as possible to get some high-profile lawyers on his case. So thank you all for coming out and just shining your light. Keith is going to join us and shine his light in just a few. All right? Thank you.
This song is called Peace of Mind by Idris Muhammad. This is one of those songs that I listen to when I want to slide into the slipstream and be carried away from the surroundings of my circumstances. Over several decades, I wasn't allowed to go outside. Outside, in fact, was a cell with a slit cut into the wall, in which a metal grate with tiny holes cut into it was placed, emitting the occasional breeze. I haven't touched a tree or a blade of grass in over 27 years. How have I survived? Music. It's been my saving grace, the only way I've been able to access that peace of mind from which life takes flight. The music, I can see and touch the world. Through music, I remain connected to life. Peace of Mind by Idris Muhammad.
Give it up for the band, please, please. They're taking precious time out of their Sundays during the last day of Pride. So happy Pride to everybody. So we're here. Keith Lamar, wrongfully convicted death row prisoner in the state of Ohio. He is he's become like my big brother. Very important person in my life, very important person in a lot of people's lives here. And this is the third event that we've done, third Freedom First concert. Started last summer in August. And just so everybody knows, this entire set list, the way the concert is structured, everything 100% curated by Keith. It's pretty amazing to think about. So what you guys are doing, this is all his magic, and we'll be hearing from him after the next song that's played, and you guys could hear a little bit more from him directly live in the flesh.
You're okay.
So follow @Justice for Keith Lamar on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and get a little bit more acquainted with his case. There are books back there on Keith's case and his situation, self-published book that he wrote titled Condemned, and I highly recommend that you pick up a copy of it and support his legal fund. All right, thank you.
Porciano by Amar Jamal. Amar Jamal is one of my favorites. When I listen to him, I focus on the notes, on the details. That's what jazz is about, paying attention to life, being alert as opposed to passively wandering through existence. We are alive, so let us wake up and live. This is what Amar and all great musicians is inviting us to do. Wake up and live. This is our one and only life, and our one and only chance to make it mean something. So let's do that. Garciano by Amar Jamal. Hey, everybody, how y'all doing? Yeah, I've been sitting here listening to the musicians, and it's just, I just want to thank, everybody for coming out today. And say thank you to all the wonderful musicians who came out to play for us. Please help, join me in giving them a big round of applause. Anybody who know me know how much I, love this music, how much this music means to me, and so it's with a deep sense of gratitude that I say thank you to each and all of you for blessing us with your gifts this afternoon, this evening. It really means so much. Like I said, I've been sitting here.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Like I said, I've been sitting here listening to the whole concert and smiling and tapping my feet. Some of this music is the music that I'm listening to when things were the darkest on my journey. And this music that you all are playing this afternoon is the very thing that brought me through the storms in my life. And so I just want it means so much to me to hear y'all play that with so much passion, with so much power. It's just very moving to me, to hear it. I think it's fair to say that we've all been through a hell of a year. And I, for one, am glad that things are beginning to open up and get back to a sense of normality. It's hard to wrap your mind around the fact that over 600,000 people have lost their lives since this time last year due to the virus. Perhaps it's appropriate to pause for a moment of silence in recognition of those who are no longer here, please. Thank you. In a little over 2 years from now, on November the 16th, 2023, I'm slated to be executed, which means that the state of Ohio has its way. I'll no longer be here. I've given a lot of thought to what that might mean for me personally, to my family and my friends, those who know and love me, and what it might mean to a society that still seems to believe that killing the citizens is somehow disconnected from who we are as people. When George Floyd was murdered last summer, it was obvious to a lot of us, black and white, that what had happened was not only wrong, but dead wrong. And a lot of people across racial and social lines came out in solidarity to express their collective outrage against a system that has far too long been used as a weapon against the poor. This moment of heightened awareness was referred to by commentators and pundits as an inflection point, which is the top curve that bends in both directions, up and down. And I found it interesting that the powers that be would define this as an inflection. Because in one sense, by calling it that, they were acknowledging that we, for a brief moment, stood at the pinnacle of our shared humanity and understood in a clear and concrete way that we have a stake in what happens to one another. But also in defining it in such a way, they were also signaling that our awareness would wane, and we would go back to thinking and caring only about ourselves again. It's Martin Luther King who once said the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. And I'm not here to refute that, not at all. But I am here to say that if the arc bends towards justice, we with our own hands have to bend it. It won't happen otherwise. We have to participate in the process in order to bring into existence the world we want to see. In fact, we have to figure out a way to flatten the curve and get off the roller coaster of caring and not caring, of doing and not doing. This is the realization I had to come to in dealing with my own situation. So I know a little bit about what I speak. And I was 23 years old when I got caught up in all this craziness. By which I mean a prison riot that claimed the lives of 10 people. As fate would have it, I just so happened to be assigned to...
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
As my little brother Wally was beginning to explain, I just so happened to be assigned to the pod where it was later alleged that most, if not all, of the murders took place. In the beginning stages of the disturbance, I made the mistake of going back to check on my personal belongings, not fully understanding the magnitude of what was happening. And since I had nothing to do with the uprising, I wasn't wearing a face covering to shield my identity. And because of this, I was later identified as a participant. The state eventually charged me with 9 counts of aggravated murder. Not because I killed 9 people, but because it's common in the criminal justice system to overcharge people as a way to induce them to plead guilty. They wanted me to plead guilty to something that I didn't do, and they told me that the 9 counts would be reduced to 1 count, which according to them meant I would be getting off scot-free. That's how they explained it to me. That's if I just been born that morning and not 23 years prior. When I insisted on the trial to prove my innocence, they withheld the evidence I needed to do that. And an all-white jury, as Wally informed her earlier, sentenced me to death. When I made it to death row, I was thrown into solitary confinement, which is where I've been ever since, for the past 28 years. And it got worse. For the first 18 years, I was on death row. I was unable to touch my family, or any other human being for that matter. By reading a book called Man's Search for Meaning by a Holocaust survivor named Viktor Frankl, I ran across the words that would literally change my life. He wrote, and I quote, "When you are confronted by circumstances you cannot change, the challenge is to change yourself." And what I had to change was my perspective. You see, I thought it was somebody else's job to give me justice. I also thought it was these people's job to let me touch my family. And I sat around waiting for almost 2 decades for them to do that. But I had it all wrong. And the crucial insight that Viktor Frankl had was that by changing yourself, you can in fact change the circumstance. How much do you love your family? That was the question that was put to me. And my answer came in the form of a hunger strike. I had to starve myself to demonstrate to these people how much I love my family. In a similar way, I had to search with my own hands for evidence to prove my own innocence. And just as I knew I would, I found it. I have in my possession the statements from actual perpetrators who admitted to the very murders for which I was sentenced to death. Not only that, but I've uncovered evidence that calls into question the state's entire case against me. These facts, too long and complicated to delve into here, have been compiled and arranged in the book I wrote called Condemned, and it's there for you. For those of you who want to learn more about my story and support the effort of having my case reheard in the court of law. A few days ago, I was blessed to have a long and glorious conversation with acclaimed jazz musician Arturo Ferro. He was just awarded a Grammy for his latest offering called 4 Questions, which is centered around the 4 questions posed by the late great historian W.B. Du Bois in his book, The Souls of Black Folk. The questions are, what does integrity do in the face of adversity and oppression? What does honesty do in the face of lies and deception? What does decency do in the face of insult? How does virtue meet brute force? I discussed these things with Arturo, and he gave me to understand that these were not just idle questions, things that only exist in the abstract. And he pointed out to me that the word "do" figures prominently throughout because in the final analysis, we must act in order to preserve our humanity. And then he told me this very beautiful story about a ritual that's performed at a church there in New York City, St. John the Divine, where all the lights are dimmed inside the church, and from the flame of one candle, many candles are lit to light up the entire sanctuary. He told me this story with so much care and concern, so much love in his voice, that I was virtually on the verge of tears. And then he said to me, "Keith, you have to be that candle. You have to draw people around the fire you have started and let them peer into the darkness you see. And again, he said these things to me with such conviction in his voice that the only thing I could say to him by way of response is, thank you, Arturo. When I was initially told that we would be able to speak, I assumed that best we would talk for 15 minutes. We spoke for 2 hours. And not 1 minute of that time was wasted talking about what those in power must do for us. Instead, we talked about what we must do for ourselves.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I listened more than I spoke that day, because I knew I probably wouldn't get the opportunity to speak to Arturo anytime soon. And because I also somehow understood that he was passing along a message. He told me to play this music, you have to be sensitive. You have to open yourself up to it and allow higher frequencies to enter into your being. He said you have to give yourself over to it, Keith. And when he said give yourself over to it, I knew he was talking about more than just music. He was talking about life. You have to give yourself over to it, to the journey. And he said you have to trust in that journey. And again, I said thank you to Arturo. You know, I never thought I would be who I am today. Not where I am, because it was always obvious that I was coming to prison. Or that I would be dead in a grave somewhere. And this is the destiny of most of the people I grew up with. They're either dead or in prison. And most of us will leave this world without ever having an encounter with our higher purpose and selves. And so most of us will never discover what it means to be alive. But I somehow, through listening to this music, found my way to higher ground. Listening to a love supreme changed my mental and spiritual circuitry, reawakened something very deep in me. John Coltrane saved my life. And when I tell people that, I'm not speaking hypothetically. I'm in an environment where I've seen countless people take their own lives. I've seen countless people lose their minds. I've seen men get up and take the feces out of the toilet and smear it all over their face. That's the kind of world I'm living in. But none of that has happened to me. And it hasn't happened to me because I have access to this music that you all are listening to today. This music is medicine for the soul. This music is healing for your mind. If it wasn't for this music, I wouldn't be talking to you all right now. So this is the reason, or the connection, that playing this music and telling my story has together. It's one and the same. This music taught me how to be sensitive. It taught me the importance of utilizing my agency. It taught me the patience that it was needed for me for things to uncover and so I could discover certain things about my case. And more than anything, it taught me how to be strong, how to hold on to myself, how to hold on to my humanity. So this is more than music. It's also...
You have 1 minute remaining.
It's also an example of what we together can do. The music that we can make if we join together, if we stand together in solidarity. That's what you should be thinking about when you're looking at all these different musicians playing these different instruments. But listen to the melody that evolves. You know, I'm going to call back and recite a poem with these great musicians. It's a poem called On Living by Nazim Hikmet, who's one of my favorite poets. This poem has meant so much to me over the years, and the musicians are going to accompany me. I'll call right back, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you for using GTL.
Am I good? So anybody that's here and you don't know what's going on right now, we're here for Keith Lamar. He's a wrongfully convicted death row prisoner in the state of Ohio. He's gonna call back and we're gonna perform a last song titled On Living. and he's gonna do it. He's gonna take us out. The Keith is working on an album right now. That album's gonna be titled Freedom First. There's multiple songs that have been already produced. You can check them out on YouTube. They're there. But yeah, Keith is calling back in right now. We're gonna start this in just a second. All right.
Thank you for using.
Laughing matter. You must live with great fear.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Like a squirrel, for example. I mean, without looking for something beyond and above living. I mean, living must be your whole life. Living is no laughing matter. You must take it seriously. So much so and to such a degree that, for example, your hands tied behind your back to the wall, or else in the laboratory, your white coat and safety glasses. You could die for people, even for people whose faces you've never seen, even though you know living is the most real, the most beautiful thing. I mean, you must take living so seriously that even at 70, for example, you'll plant olive trees. And not for your children either. But because although you fear death, you don't believe it. Because living, I mean, weighs heavier.
Correctional Facility and may be recorded and monitored.
say we might not get up from the white table, even though it's impossible not to feel sad about going a little too soon. We still laugh at the jokes being told. We'll look out the window to see if it's raining, or still wait anxiously for the latest newscast. Let's say we're at the front for something worth fighting for, say. There in that first offensive on that very day, we might fall on our face dead. We'll notice with a curious anger, but we'll still worry ourselves to death about the outcome of the war, which could last years. Let's say we're in prison and close to 50, and we have 18 more years, say, before the iron doors will open. We still live for the outside, with its people and animals struggle and win. I mean the outside beyond the walls. I mean however and wherever we are, we must live as if we would never die.
Thank you for using GTL.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was beautiful, everybody. Thanks so much, especially to Albert Marquez. I met Albert last year, as Waleed mentioned, and he and I have grown closer and closer over the ensuing weeks and months. And as Waleed mentioned, he was here to see me not too long ago, a few weeks ago. And it was somewhat surreal. And when you meet under such difficult circumstances, mine and his. I mean, everybody has been caught up in quarantine. Everybody has been forced to modify their movements. And in a sense, everybody has been brought into what it means to kind of be thrown back on your own resources. And so our exchanges have been very, very intense. And he's been here listening to me and kind of learning about my story and really just learning about my love of this music and why it has meant so much to me over the years. And this poem, when he heard it, when he heard me recite it, and I recited it to him when he came to see me, because this is something that lives inside of me, this music, these words. I know every symbol, every turn of the horn, every.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I know all of this stuff is in my system. These words, I can recite them at the drop of the dime anywhere, anytime. And I have, because here in prison, you wait around a lot by yourself. And so nice not to be alone. I have these words, James Baldwin, Richard Wright, just lodged in my brain. And I just, recited it for Albert and Waleed just so they could know that, this stuff is really, really deep to me, really, really precious to me, this music. And so again, I want to thank all the musicians. I've been listening in closely. And I think that's Vinny. I think that's Vinny on the drums. I think that might have been Sammy singing on Truth. These are people who I met. I'll never forget their names. These are people I met over the course of these concerts, and Jerry might be there playing the saxophone. And I just want to send you all, much love, from the bottom of my heart. This means so much to me, and I can't wait to get the videos so I can watch them over and over and over again. The people here think I'm a lunatic because I play this music. Think I'm crazy, but the opposite is actually the case. This music has kept me sane. Has kept me on the right side of humanity. And I just want to thank each and every one of you musicians who showed up today. For me, I want to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. I won't forget you. Thanks so much. As I go forward, I'll carry you with me. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks so much.
All right, he said it. I just want to give us extra special shout out to all of you. Sammy Stevens on voice, Dominique Gagne on the flute, rhythm section was Vinny, Marty Eisenberg, Eddie Borjoli, Marta Sanchez, Jonathan Saraga, Jake Henry, Callie Rodriguez, Pablo Macy's, Yaish Muhammad, Dan Lerner, Noah Bless, Ansi DeFay, Alfredo Colon, Elijah Herring, Jerry Wilkie, Cash George, Kevin Edel, Sky Hamilton Carranza, Jessica Lurie, Jay Rodriguez, and of course, yours truly, Albert Marquez. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Follow Justice for Keith Lamar on Instagram, Twitter. You can go over to the table, support his legal fund, buy his book, and hopefully follow any upcoming events and just spread the word, raise awareness about his case and situation, and appreciate all of you guys for coming out, listening, and taking part in this. Thank you.